I was talking to somebody recently about simple ways of hastening the downfall of inhuman governments. And we came up with some simple things, and there was loads of them, 15, then 12, then 10, and we boiled it down to three things. I'll share those with you, if I may, because I think you'll find them really interesting. The first one, don't bank with a big bank. Avoid giving your money to the large, centralised major banks, like Barclays, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, RBS, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Citigroup, all those people. Now, I hold my hands up right now and say to you that I currently do bank with one of these organisations, though I am in the process of switching over. Now I am a permanent resident here in the US and I've got my green card, and now have some additional administrative freedom that makes things a little easier moving from East Coast to West Coast back and to. So I'm not there yet, but I intend to be. And this was further underscored by some advice from Catherine Austin Fitz, who I met very briefly at Paul Levy's house a few months ago here in Portland. She agrees that the faster we move our money away from the big banks, those who love centralisation, the better. And it has a very profound and immediate effect. It scares the shit out of them. It's a strange thing contemplating something as practical and concrete as this, isn't it? Considering the philosophical and metaphysical models that we usually reflect upon. But there's an enormous misconception here with banking that is very illustrative of how the system controls common thinking. Many people have the notion that the bank basically safeguards our personal money by providing us with a private account, a place to keep money until we need to use it, a simple little transactional space that we use to help administrate deposits and withdrawals and so on, and maybe some loans or interest or savings and whatnot. A bank is nothing of the sort, no. When you put your money into a big bank, it becomes their money. They use that fake currency to centralise world resources, kill people all over the world, directly and indirectly, suppress human freedom, poison the water and the land, sustain inhumane corporations, and generally despiritualise human society. That is what they do with your money, and the more money we give them, the more they do it. So when we put our money into these little banks that have these pretty commercials on television and these dull adverts, we are funding those operations. Every penny we put into a big bank is another piece of freedom that we are transferring from our community and putting into the control system's war chest. So instead, if you need to bank with a local organisation with all the benefits that we've become accustomed to, but who are human-focused. Not profit-focused, not empire-focused. There are actually people in there, in these credit unions and community banks, real people in positions of authority with balanced, humane, natural ethics and community conscience. Simple stuff, really. Or if you want to get really radical, perhaps you might even choose not to use money at all. Examine the nature of it, understand its spell. Don't use it. Don't use credit. Do not use Visa or MasterCard facilities at all, ever. Do something else. I've seen that in operation. I know lots of people who don't use money. It can work, but that takes real commitment. But the principle is, if you are using money, think about where you keep that. Because when you put that in the bank, you're consenting to something that you might not want to. Number 2, don't vote. When you vote, particularly in national elections, whichever way you vote, you are voting to prolong the old hierarchy. The empire, the control system, needs your vote. It doesn't matter whose name is on the paper, what boxes you tick. It's just the paper and your consciousness that matter. Any vote is a vote for the system. Now, a few people, probably over the age of 50, might be getting a bit upset now. Tough. Let me tell you how and why I stopped voting. I used to vote in the UK, like everyone else. I used to go to the local community centre or church or hall or whatever, stand in a little booth or box and tick a piece of paper and vote for a person. And then one day, when this came about again every 4 years, at a major national election for a new government, I went to the ballot box and had a little revelation. I looked at the choices I had to vote for, the blues, the reds, the yellows and the greens, and they were all crap. Empty, unwise, all of them. The Tories, Labour, the Lib Dems and the Greens, all crap. Lib Dems, Liberal Democrats. I didn't feel that any of them warranted my vote, deserved it. So I thought, naturally, well, I won't vote then. And then I got this twinge of guilt, like I was considering something vile and improper or criminal. And that nearly made me just pick the best of a bad bunch, vote and get out. But I didn't. I stopped. And I exercised my power of reason. I stopped, I stood still, stood alone in the world for a moment as a man who cares deeply about life and his community and his fellow humans. And I thought about it for a minute. Why did it feel wrong to not vote? And I thought that there were a number of considerations that went into that. What was nagging at my mind? Why did it feel wrong to not vote? And these considerations, I discovered that all of them were false installations of control system conditioning. So I went through these internal objections one by one and dealt with them, and they were these. Number one, it is my duty as a citizen to vote. It is a civic responsibility. Okay, I am not a citizen. Look into that. I am a natural, free man, and I have no duties that are any business of the government. The second obstacle was the idea that my grandfathers fought in the Second World War, as did millions, for the freedoms I enjoy today. So voting is an essential part of that liberty, and I owe it to them. My grandfathers did not know why they fought in the war. They thought they were fighting the evil Nazis for the freedom of England and Europe, but they weren't. They were fighting for reasons they did not understand, and despite their bravery and good intent, I owe them, and all the other hoodwinked millions, nothing. In fact, I honour their memories with far greater meaning and integrity by discovering why the Second World War came about, what the real reasons for it were, and exposing the treachery of both Allied and Axis governments in conspiring to murder millions of their own people for no good reason. The third consideration, the third obstacle, if I don't vote, someone crap might get into power. All the candidates were crap. They are always crap. The people on the ballot paper are always unwise and know nothing about the world and have no higher spiritual wisdom, as I would expect as a bare minimum for community governance. And they all have personal vested interests in upholding an inhuman system. They are all crap. Someone crap will definitely be voted into office, with or without me. If everyone was like me and didn't vote, then where the hell would we be? If no one votes, the system will fail. Good. That will demonstrate how pathetic it is. Whatever is left will be more truthful and constructive by its nature than pissing around with this ruinous nonsense. Let's do something else. Let's make communities that are genuinely independent, who don't need government approval for what they wish to do. Communities who act alone. Do that. Put your time, money, blood and sweat into that. Put your consciousness into something good like that. So those were the things that made me feel that not voting was bad, and when I thought about them, they were all false. So that was it. I intentionally spoiled my vote, as it were, by not voting for anybody and instead writing "We are free humans" across the face of the paper. I then folded the paper in two, put it in the little slot in the white box, and left. So to vote is consenting to prolong the agony. It's living with toothache for years instead of a couple of days. Now, if I lived in a little rural community with 500 people, 500 ace people, and one man or woman from that community was going to get elected to help run local affairs on our behalf, I mean really step into an honourable and effective role, then I would vote. But as soon as it connects to outside national political interests of Labour, Democrats, Tories, Republicans, forget it. No vote. The funny thing is, a few years after stopping voting, I discovered that there was no such thing as a democratically elected national government anywhere in the Western world. No major nations have one or have ever had one. Democracy is a mirage. It is a con trick. And this is very hard to swallow at first. It takes years to internalise that truth without it knocking you over. But when you finally get to it and admit what you know in your heart to be true, that there is no democracy and that the government is not your friend, then not voting is the only reasonable course of action. So that was my second suggestion in hastening the end of empire. The third and final one, is a very simple thing you can do, and that is not to shop for pleasure. I don't mean shopping for things that you need, like food, clothes. I mean ceasing to buy things that you don't need. The system cannot properly function unless we pour our currency units into it. We sustain the system when we unconsciously buy crap from Walmart and Target and Apple and Samsung and Sony and go with trends and follow fashions and go to see rubbish blockbuster movies with Hollywood A-list actors and listen to fabricated pop music with people who aren't musicians and basically just unmindfully hand over money for stupid shit. If you're going to hand over money for something, try and make sure it's good money and it's a good thing you're buying. If you earn $20 for weeding an old lady's back garden and then you go and spend that on a meal that is cooked by a happy, excellent person using real vegetables from the ground, from the farm around the corner, all dished up in a cool place, then that is a reasonable exchange. That is good money and a good thing. But if your money is earned from gangster capitalism and exploitation, and you're throwing it down in bad places with bad ingredients, with unhappy, unmindful people, then you are just darkening the imperial shadow. Now I think that most thinking people have largely stopped unmindful shopping. Most shopping malls around America now are gladly falling into decline, thank God. People have wised up. Now, the malls are often filled with a strange underclass of wide-eyed economic immigrants who haven't quite cottoned onto the idea that these malls are actually killing them. And these sort of financial nomads are still associating life success with amassing money and having things. We've all done that at one point or another, to greater or lesser extents. They will learn, as did the middle classes, that this is a silly mistake. Cloudy-headed shopping is a massively dysfunctional thing to do. It's not just a bit of fun. When you do need to buy stuff, try and get it from real people who produce real things with as little processing, corporatization and wankness as possible. It's not always easy to do that. Buying a smartphone or a laptop or using Visa, getting on an aeroplane, things I do quite a bit. I involve myself in this shit. I do. But I'm onto it, and I'm beginning to withdraw my consent from it more and more with every day. I am making efforts to counterbalance and offset these things by doing other, more giving things, real things with real people. Happy creations and meaningful services, right? Things that generate goodness and authenticity, nourishment, health, growth, quality, community. Simple, amazing things that we're all really good at. So if you work toward, as I am trying to do, these three simple things, don't bank with a big bank, don't vote, don't shop, then you will speed up the emergence of a better world. Because the old world is going away bit by bit all the time. It is disappearing anyway, whether you're here or not, whatever you do or don't do. But we can do our bit to pour conscious fuel on the fire of renewal. The whole thing's got to come down. It's not reverse engineerable. We cannot backpedal to the point where we can heal the epic mental illness that is running our world economies, resources, military, education and media and government. They are beyond repair. The extreme ridiculousness that we have each wrought upon this planet is a group disavowal. We're all